Assalamu alaikum, which means may the peace of God be with you. I wanted to start off today with a incident, a sort of, if you like, a keyhole into the insight of some people when it comes to this question: God, myth or reality. A few years ago I was working in a city called High Wycombe. It's near London, and back in those days we didn't really have internet on our phones, and we didn't really have 4G and these sorts of things. So what we used to do was go from work to the internet cafe in the good old days, log in, use your email, walk out. And internet cafes were quite popular back then. They're mostly privately held franchises or businesses. And there was this guy I used to see. He was the owner of the cafe. He used to be into video games, and he used to run his own cafe and stuff. So I used to speak to him now and again. Once when I found an opportunity, I thought, okay, let me ask him, does he actually believe? So I said to him, do you believe in God? And he said, I believe in science. And he said it in a very religious tone. He said it in a very preachy way. And that particular incident always stuck with me, because it made me realize that actually he's just one guy amongst perhaps millions of people who think it's a rational reply that when someone asks you, do you believe in God? They reply, I believe in science. By the end of this presentation, you will, God willing, inshallah, see that is the equivalent of me asking for your name and you saying, I don't like stamp collecting. Because the question and the answer do not actually have any link whatsoever. Before we answer the question about God, myth or reality, what I want to do is this. I want us to consider something. I want us to consider whether the question of God is even important. Okay, let's compare the question to another question. Let's compare it to the question, what killed off the dinosaurs? So when it comes to what killed off the dinosaurs, there are many different ideas out there, many different theories. According to some, it was some sort of cosmic event, some sort of object that came and hit the earth and killed off the dinosaurs. According to others, it wasn't that. It could have been perhaps some sort of environmental change which killed off the dinosaurs. Either way, what killed off the dinosaurs is not going to keep you awake at night. It is not really going to have a big impact if you found out the answer to that question, because it's just something which happened in the remote past, and it may be that they were killed off by this particular thing or that particular thing or whatever. But that particular question, answered yes, no, whichever way, doesn't really impact our lives. Now, why is this question different? This question is fundamentally different because this question impacts every single moment of our existence, every single intention we have, every single statement we say, every single action that we actually take. About 2 days ago, when I was going to sleep, because of the time zone difference between London and here, it's about 8 hours, it's sometimes hard to sleep at night. So I stay awake in bed for a few hours trying to go to sleep, and I have a white blanket to try and sleep with. And I was really trying to sleep, and I couldn't sleep, and my room was dark. I was trying to put out all the lights so that I could just sleep. And as I put the blanket over my head, I was reminded that this will happen to me one day. That a day will come when I will actually have somebody putting a white sheet over my face. Not by my own choice, but by necessity. And that moment about 2 days ago when I had that reflection that actually whoever I am, whatever education I have, whichever friends I have, however much money I have in my bank account, who I'm married to, who my kids are, is all irrelevant. When that final moment will come, when somebody will send a WhatsApp message and say, so and so has passed away. And that's going to be you one day. That's a promise. That is a promise that no one can deny. You can be an atheist, you can be a theist, you can be an agnostic, you can be an agnostic, you can be a polytheist, you can be a pantheist, you can even be a panther. Makes no difference. You are going to die one day. And the question of God's existence, it's fundamental. Because if God exists, then death is not the end. If God doesn't exist, then there's nothing to worry about. Nothing at all to be concerned about. Now, what I want to do is, I want us to understand this question needs to be taken very seriously. Whether you believe in God or you do not believe in God, this is not about what particular event killed off the dinosaurs. This is something very serious. Since this is something very serious, it requires us to put aside prejudices that we may have about religion, prejudices that we may have against religious people, or any particular dislike for any particular religious injunction. Put all those things aside. We're all going to pass away. We need to know, is there a creator? Is there not a creator? And what we need to do is this. We need to understand that the question about God's existence is not just a question about what's going to happen when we die. It's also a question about the way we live this life. Jim Carrey, the famous comedian, many of you guys probably don't know him because he used to be very famous in the 90s and 80s. Jesse Ventura and those sort of films, Ace Ventura, Liar Liar, The Truman Show. He's now a bit older. He's got a grey beard, he's in his some 50s, and he's no longer that young, handsome guy that he used to be. And he said something very interesting. He said, I wish everybody has what I have, meaning his money, his fame, his access to traveling all over the world, his access to eat whatever food he wants, his access to meet any celebrity he wants, having millions of people following him on Facebook, Instagram. So basically, what we are told from a capitalistic point of view, what is the good life? What is, if you like, the American dream, or what is the pursuit of happiness? He says, I wish everybody had what I have, so that they know this is not the answer. And the reason why I remember that statement is because that's kind of similar to the statement or the sentiment that I came to perhaps when I left university about 10 years ago, when I pretty much was on my way to living the good life, and I just reflected about the shortness of this life, and just reflected about, do these things really make us happy? These things that we're told, if you get a job, you get happy. If you get married, you have kids, you get happy. If your children, you pay off their tuition fees to go off at, whatever university, you're going to be happy. And I came to the conclusion, actually, no. I don't think these things make people happy. Simply because if you look at the lives of celebrities, the sort of people who have everything in the world, they're miserable. Some of them die from overdoses. Some of them are on antidepressants. Some of them, they just have a fake smile. They just try and live life through this sort of mask, through this sort of veneer that, we have this particular life. But there's something which is fundamental to the human existence, which is this. A pen, like the pen which is here, has a particular purpose. The purpose is to write. And when it writes, if the pen had a soul, the pen would be happy because it's doing what it was created to do. The human being, the human experience, is fundamentally to have a relationship with God, and it's through that relationship that a human being will find happiness. So we need to know if the belief in God is rational or is irrational, because this doesn't just impact where we're going to go, it also impacts our very lives as it stands. Now we need to look into who is God. God can mean many different things in many different places by many different people. So what we're speaking about here is the general, commonsensical, rational conception of God. A conception of God that you can come to, whether you read the Qur'an or you haven't, but something that you can come to if you were to deeply reflect about our world and about our place in it. A creator who is one, who is nothing like the creation, who is all-powerful, and who has created us for a purpose. When we refer to God, we sometimes refer in a way that someone may think we're referring to a male. God is not male or female. He is beyond our imagination. He is beyond our anything we can actually conceive. So this is a general conception of God. And this is the conception of God that I want to speak about. Human beings, we already have beliefs in self-evident truths. Let me repeat that. Human beings already have beliefs in self-evident truths. Self-evident truths are things which we know to be true without any evidence. Sometimes in this world of post-truth and scientific pseudo-rationalism, we're taught you have to have proof for every single thing that you believe. That's actually nonsense. Every single thing that you believe should be rational, yes, but not every single thing in the world needs proof. For example, we all believe that the world is real, that we are all here, we're all real, we're not actually in some sort of illusion, some sort of matrix. That rational belief can never be proven, but it's a rational belief. It's a self-evident truth. Likewise, I believe that my mind and your mind can arrive at truth. We can use our mind to arrive at truth. This is again something that we trust our reason, and we trusting our reason is based upon not evidence, but is based upon something before evidence. We trust our mind, and that is a self-evident truth. Likewise, if I was to show you a picture, today I just saw on Facebook when scrolling through, there was a cat which was actually put through some sort of torture or something, or some kids were hurting it, or whatever it was. And this cat was found and it was being treated in hospital, and they were trying to treat this cat. And as they were trying to treat this cat, the cat actually had a tear coming out of its eye. Now, the idea of right and wrong, the idea that hurting an animal like a cat is wrong, is not something that you can prove. If I was to bring that cat that I just saw on Facebook today and show you the people who were torturing that cat, you would say that is wrong. But right and wrong is not something which can actually be proven. Right and wrong is a self-evident truth. It is something that we deep down believe is true, although we don't have any evidence for it. But that's fine because it's rational. The belief in God, just like the belief the world is real, or the belief that other minds exist, or the belief that morals exist objectively, there is right and wrong, the belief in God is an innate belief to the human being. It is imprinted upon the souls of the human being. A human being deep down inside already knows there is a creator. And this belief in a creator can get buried. It can become buried by many different factors. So when a child is born, they're born upon this natural state in which they recognize there is a creator. But their parents may turn them into atheists, may turn them into Buddhists, may turn them into Christians. The innate belief within us doesn't tell us anything about how to pray in terms of the Islamic way of prayer. It doesn't tell us that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is God's messenger. It just tells us that there is a creator who's the only one worthy of worship. Now, when a human being has this innate belief and is covered by sins, by society, by sometimes intellectual doubts, that particular innate belief is always there and it's always going to be there. And it's up to a human being whether they're willing to listen to that inner voice. A few years ago, I attended a course, and in this course, I met a gentleman who, maybe he was in his close to 50s, late 40s, something like this. And he told me something very interesting. We were talking about God. He doesn't have a religion, but he told me something very interesting. He told me he was brought up in an atheist household. His parents were atheists. He grew up as an atheist. All his life he thought religion was nonsense and there is no God. Yet he said, when in my life I got into a dire situation, I got into a helpless situation where I could not turn to anybody, in my most desperate moment, in which I was at need, I called out to God for help, and according to him, a miracle happened and I got help. Now, I can't verify his story. I wasn't there. But the story is interesting because it reflects something that we believe in as Muslims from the Qur'an. In the Qur'an, God says that a human being, when they are on a ship and they see waves coming in at them, waves, and they think, right, that's it, I'm going to die. At that moment, they make their faith sincerely to God. Oh God, if you save us from this, we will surely be grateful. And what happens? When the person is taken out of that situation, they forget God again. Trust me, I have, and I'm sure if deep down, even if you happen to be an atheist, deep down we know that when we're in trouble, when we cannot turn to anyone else, there is something in us telling us to return to our Creator. And this is, in Islam, it is called the fitrah, the innate natural disposition. And this is always there. It's just a matter of uncovering the truth within. So rational argumentation for the existence of God is one way of awakening the truth within. The truth that there is a creator is not established by rational argumentation. Let me repeat that. The truth that there is a creator is not established by rational argumentation. It is merely uncovered by rational argumentation. The truth within can also be uncovered, like I mentioned previously, when a person goes through a dire experience. When they find out, for example, they may be saying, yeah, there's no God, yeah, it's evolution, yeah, it's the Big Bang, yeah, it's this, it's that. Oh, they get a call from the doctor, you have 3 months to live, you've been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. There's a different thing going on here. Human psychology plays a huge part in whether we are willing to acknowledge deep down inside that we already know there is a creator. Apart from rational argumentation, which can uncover the fitrah, the natural state, apart from dire situations, there is also introspection. Just thinking about your life. Like I mentioned previously, when I was thinking about there's going to come a day where somebody's going to put a white sheet over my face and say, right, this guy's deceased now. Introspection, thinking about the shortness of this life. Here in Malaysia, you have some great examples of that. Some of the insects that you see flying around, some of the really small ones, some of these insects, they all need, especially the small one, which looks like a fly, but it's not a fly, it looks like a small ant with a wing. That particular insect only lives for one day. It becomes an adult in one day, and it dies in one day. It lives for one day. And I want to ask you, is your life really longer than a day? If I was to ask you 10 years ago about a certain incident which happened, maybe your birthday, maybe someone passing away or something, if you really reflected about it, that event 10 years ago is only really a few minutes ago. And on the day of judgment, when people will be resurrected, they'll be asked, how long did you stay on earth? And people will think that they stayed no longer than a part of a day. If you speak to some of the elder people in your family, people in their 70s and 80s and 90s, try it, trust me. Ask them, do you think you had a long life? Do you think you actually lived a very long time? You'll get a reply somewhere along the lines of, I don't know where all my time went. I was young yesterday and today I'm old. So introspection, thinking about life, these existential questions, these can also uncover the fitrah. Likewise, one last thing which can also help facilitate uncovering the fitrah is direct contact with revelation, direct contact with hearing the word of the Qur'an, or hearing a statement of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. These can also facilitate uncovering the fitrah. You don't want to wait until you get into a situation like this. Because trust me, there's going to come a day, you may not be on a ship, but it may simply be a situation where you have children and through some series of incidents, you cannot provide for them and they're starving and they can't sleep. Or a situation where you discover you only have a few hours to live because you're on a plane that's about to crash. Don't wait until you're in this situation. Reflect, think, and project yourself into the future. Because psychology here is extremely important. Sometimes when you're having, I've had years of experience of talking to atheists, right? There's a huge difference when you speak to an atheist, when you first prime him, thinking about how this question of God is important. When you're doing a merely intellectual exercise, it's just gymnastics. That's all it is. I give you an argument, you give me an argument. I give you an argument, you give me an argument. It's like badminton. But when you start thinking about these questions deeply, that's when a human being starts thinking about these questions correctly and with the right frame of mind. So when it comes to God's existence, what are the rational arguments that can uncover the fitrah? What is the rational arguments that can make us remember that we have a creator, that this creator is worthy of worship? The first thing is the universe itself. The universe itself. Now I have this camera in front of me. This camera, fundamentally, what is it made of? It's made of plastic. Where do you get plastic from? You get it from oil. This camera is made of glass. Where do you get glass from? Sand. This camera has some metals. Metals are from the ground. Everything this camera is made of, you can find in the Sahara Desert. in the Sahara Desert, you're walking along, you find this exact camera. Maybe not the company, Canon, maybe some other company, maybe not even a company, just a functioning camera. Everything you need to make up that camera is already in the desert. You got the oil, which you get the plastic from, you got the sand, from which you get the glass, you get the iron ore, from which you get the metal. Imagine you came across, as you're walking along, you came across, buried within the sand, this camera. Would you pick it up and say, hey, this is really interesting? What basically might have happened was millions of years ago, there was wind that blew and there was some lightning, the oil bubbled up and the camel trod, and over millions of years of random processes, this perfectly functioning camera came together. That would actually be a visa to go to the insane asylum. You would think to yourself, where did this come from? Clearly, we as human beings, if we were walking around in the desert and we found an object like that, it would make sense that there is a creator behind this object, because we have direct experience of making objects. And so we know that objects aren't made through a series of random accidents. It's not just about the universe at large. Even if you go down to the detail, a small detail, we have on this planet billions of species. Billions. These billions of species, we live in a very particular type of way in relationship to our celestial objects. If the earth was slightly closer to the sun, life wouldn't exist. If it was slightly further away, we would actually freeze over. Not only that, when you look at a particular organism, this is the Alaska wood frog. The Alaska wood frog is found in North America, as the name suggests. The Alaska wood frog lives in an environment which is extremely harsh, in an environment in which the temperatures drop to a level that life cannot carry on existing in terms of organisms. You cannot have insects, you cannot have other beings, small beings, living in that extremely cold environment. So what basically happens with the Alaska wood frog? When this frog realizes winter's coming, the temperature's dropping, this frog doesn't run away, doesn't go to find a warmer climate. It stays where it is and it starts to freeze. And it stays in the same spot. And it continues staying there for a few days, a few weeks, a few months. It's completely frozen over. All of its organs are cold. They are, in terms of temperature, there is no warmth there. It is completely what we would call clinically dead. It doesn't function, it doesn't eat, it doesn't mate, it doesn't move, it doesn't even breathe. It continues like that for 7 months. Dead. If you took this frog and you found it on the floor frozen in a block of ice, and you picked up that block of ice and you went to your freezer because you happen to be a bit of a weirdo and you stuck it in the freezer, what would happen? It'd just stay in the same spot. And if you took that out of the freezer, stuck it back in the ground, same thing. Yet, after 7 months, when the temperature starts to increase, slowly we are getting some of the spring weather coming in, some of the ice melting away, and as that is happening, what does this frog do? It produces its own antifreeze from its own body, and it injects that within its body, and then it starts to resurrect its own organs. And slowly it starts to have a heartbeat, slowly it starts to have some form of circulation of blood, and slowly, before you know it, the frog jumps out of that ice bed that it was actually on. This is one organism in one part of the world, when the whole universe is actually, when you deeply reflect, a sign of God. Another thing to think about is this. It's cool to say, yeah, I don't believe in God, but let's really think about that for a second. Yeah, I don't believe in God. Yeah, it's cool. I listen to Richard Dawkins. I've got this nice atheist t-shirt on, and I'm part of this group. Yeah, and I don't believe in God. I could do what I want. And I'm a humanist, and I'm a feminist, and I'm a humanitarian, and I'm a good person, and I'm this, and I'm that. Well, do you know what? If you don't believe in God, that's all crap. No, that wasn't a slip up. It's crap. If you say, I don't believe in God, you are not a humanist, you're not a humanitarian, you're not a good Samaritan. Because good and bad does not exist. Good and bad is merely an illusion of the mind to help you survive. If there is no God, there is no right and wrong. So we need to think about the implications of, oh, I'm an atheist humanist. That's a contradiction. We as rational human beings realize there is such a thing as right and wrong. Right and wrong is not merely a subjective thing to help us survive. We do believe in helping the poor, and we believe that is good. And we do believe in stopping harm, and we believe that that is right. Well, if you believe in right and wrong, the only way of conceptually justifying right and wrong is a creator, because the creator is the anchor who will be a reference point for what is right and wrong. Because without the creator, all of the moral systems that we actually have in the world that we are so passionate about, human beings are more passionate about morals than they're passionate about anything else. Yet what we are told is there's no God. That's fine, but we need to, if we're going to go down that road, we need to accept the consequences. Right and wrong is merely a figment of our imagination. God is the explanation of why human beings have objective morals. And if we are to look at the universe by and large itself, as the universe, the Qur'an asks an interesting question. Qur'an says, were they created from nothing? Are they the creators of themselves? Did they create the heavens and the earth? Rather, they are not certain. The universe itself, if we were to look at it as an entire object, there's three possibilities about the universe. Either the universe came from nothing, or the universe created itself, or the universe has a creator. As cool as it sounds, a universe from nothing makes no sense. And I am ashamed and I am saddened that we live in a world where we actually have to discuss why a universe from nothing doesn't make any sense. And the reason that is because people today think they're civilized when actually we are no more than just sheep. I'm going to share an incident of a Muslim from Saudi Arabia, a woman, who came over to the UK. She became an atheist, and when one of the converts to Islam, and like Allah says, like God says in the Quran, He'll replace some people by another, when he tried to explain to her about the universe, all she kept doing is saying, and by the way, just shows you the inferiority complex, she also changed her name from an Arabic name to a nice English name. All she kept saying is, Lawrence Krauss says. Lawrence Krauss says. He's a physicist who's written a book called The Universe from Nothing. She did not understand what he said in the book. She did not understand how absurd it is to say the universe has no beginning. But she wanted to follow her desires and not believe in God. So all she kept arguing is, no, the universe did come from nothing. The universe did come from nothing. Well, look, simple analogy. From nothing comes nothing. It's sad that today we actually have to make this point. You cannot get something from nothing. If I put my hand in my pocket, and before I put my hand in, you check my pocket, there is nothing in my pocket. Yet when I put my hand in my pocket, I move it around and I bring out a rabbit. You're going to say to me that doesn't make any sense. Precisely. So the idea of a universe coming from nothing is just childish. Secondly, believe it or not, the desperation of the atheists, they will say the universe created itself. And I'm not making this option up. This is actually an option that they believe in. Some of them. There was some sort of strange incident that the universe created itself. Well, in order to create yourself, you have to exist in the first place. But if you don't exist, you cannot create yourself. So that option also doesn't make any sense. The only option which makes sense is that there is a creator. So apart from the rational argumentation, there is a simple formula which the Qur'an promotes, the book of the Muslim promotes, which is this. Any human being, wherever you are, wherever you live, whichever circumstance you're from, whatever gender you are, whatever nationality you are, whether you're rich or you're poor, if you do a simple thing, you will get a response. If you call out for guidance, you will get guided. If you are sincere, it is impossible that you as a human being are sincere and you're looking for guidance and you do not get guidance. That is impossible. I've had direct experience with people who used to be militant atheists or sometimes from other backgrounds. When they were looking into the idea of God or Islam, but when they actually realized, hang on a second, I am a limited human being with a limited understanding, other people can maybe deceive me, other people can maybe lead me astray, let me ask my creator. They didn't necessarily need to use the term Allah, what we use in Arabic. They didn't necessarily need to pray in the way that Muslims prayed. But when they said, oh God, my creator, I ask you for help, I ask you to show me what the truth is, they were guided. Now you may say, well, that's a subjective thing. And I'll reply, so what? You know, we need to get past rhetoric. We hear a lot of rhetoric all the time. Oh, that's this. Oh, that's that. But let me tell you something. There is nothing more powerful for a human being than their own personal experience. Yes, you can have objective arguments for God's existence. Yes, we can put forth a very powerful argument for why the Qur'an is a miracle. But there is nothing which is more powerful than your own experiences with God. Because those experiences are priceless and those experiences cannot be challenged by anyone's argument. Now what I want to do is I want to cover what I began off with the gentleman who I met, and when I asked him, do you believe in God? His reply was, I believe in science. And I want to show you how absurd that reply is. And the example I gave is, that's the equivalent of me asking you what your name is and you replying something like, I don't like stamp collecting. Why it's absurd is this. Science is an attempt to explain how the world works. It is not an attempt to explain why anything exists in the first place. Science has given us wonderful things. This presentation is because of science. This camera is because of science. We're sitting here with these blocks in our pockets which are linked to satellites because of science. And because of science, we can always get regular updates about Lady Gaga. So science is great. Science is fantastic. But science has a particular methodology. Science has a particular application. You shouldn't turn it into a religion in of itself. Science doesn't explain why anything exists. Science is only an attempt to explain how the world exists. So even when it comes to evolutionary biology, whether you are somebody who believes in Darwinian evolution or you're somebody that does not believe in Darwinian evolution, don't try and use that as an excuse not to believe in God. How many people here have heard of the God delusion? Raise your hands. The God delusion, Richard Dawkins' book. Few. Okay. That is the most famous atheist book in the world. That is, if you like, the Atheist Manifesto. That is, if you like, the Atheist Bible. The central argument of the God delusion is based upon Darwinian evolution. And it's written by the Oxford biologist Richard Dawkins. And what he says in another book is that Darwin allowed us to be intellectually satisfied atheists. Now the problem is this. Darwin himself was never an intellectually satisfied atheist. The only person who's going to be an intellectually satisfied atheist after studying evolutionary biology is somebody who fundamentally doesn't understand the difference between how and why. They think the how is the why, and there's a big difference between the two. What we need to realize is that science is not a threat to God. Science, if anything, is a way of understanding God's creation, the mechanisms that are put into place for life to flourish. This handsome gentleman is the guy who may look like somebody who served you in the cafeteria today, but this is actually Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan doesn't need an introduction. There are millions of corpses which are enough to show his introduction. There are maps which had to be redrawn to make his introduction. Genghis Khan as a figure in the history of the world is somebody who is undeniable. You cannot deny that this person existed. But I want to ask you a question. Can you prove scientifically that Genghis Khan existed? You may say, whoa, what we can do is we can take a DNA kit and we can go to his grave. Whoa. We don't know where his grave is. Legend has it that he was buried in a secret place in Mongolia, and the people who buried him were actually killed so that no one finds out where he's actually buried. So we can't do that. How can we prove scientifically he exists? We actually can't. It is impossible to show that he existed scientifically. The existence of Genghis Khan is not based upon science. The existence of Genghis Khan is based upon what's known as testimony. Testimony is a valid source of knowledge. If I was to call you up here on stage, and if I was to extract, whether you believe in God or you don't, whether you're an atheist, Buddhist, whatever, if I was to extract the beliefs that you hold which are rational, the beliefs that you hold which are rational, more than 99% of your beliefs are based upon testimony. They're not based upon science. Now you may say, but I believe in the Big Bang, but I believe in Darwin's theory of evolution, but I believe in the theory of phlogiston or whatever. Your belief in those things is still based upon the testimony of scientists. You never did the experiments yourself. When you go to a library and you study science, physics, philosophy, history, poetry, you are accepting the testimony of other people. Majority of human knowledge, which is rational, is not based upon science, is based upon testimony. Sometimes when I'm traveling to different countries, you sometimes see things which can really shake you. I was traveling through a few years ago in 2013. I was traveling through Malawi. Malawi is a country close to South Africa, near Mozambique. It's a very poor country due to corruption. They have a lot of natural resources but a lot of mismanagement. And I saw a level of poverty that I've never seen in my life. And the sorts of feelings that can be generated when you look at poverty, when you look at inequality, when you look at injustice, those sort of feelings are real, are they not? Those sort of feelings can really move us. But if you were to say, look at this picture and feel something in your heart that you want to help this child, you want to perhaps buy her some shoes or give her some food to eat. Imagine if I came up to you and said, sorry, there's no such thing as morality. Sorry, there's no such thing as moral injunctions. All these feelings that you're having are subjective. You're going to say, shut up. I have these feelings. I believe in right and wrong. I can see that this child needs help. How can you do that using science? Something that we believe in with such emotion, human beings, whether we're atheists, Muslims, Jews, Christians, whatever, we believe in right and wrong, we believe in charity, we believe in helping people. But science cannot tell you right and wrong. What telescope are you going to use to measure the rightness or wrongness of helping this child? So this extremely crude, narrow, childish way of looking at the world, saying I believe in science, well, you can't even explain testimony, and you can't even explain the moral feelings that we have which are real. Yes, they're intangible, but by God they're real. What about metaphysics? What about the fact that I believe that that gentleman over there with the hat, he actually has a mind? What about the belief that his mind is actually trustworthy? That my mind is actually trustworthy? The belief that the world is real? Metaphysical truths cannot be proven using science. Every effect has a cause. That's a metaphysical truth. But that metaphysical truth cannot be proven using science. Science depends upon metaphysical claims. It cannot prove them. And we have mathematics. Science is based upon mathematics. You cannot solve a mathematical equation using science. Mathematical equations inform science. Science doesn't inform how you actually solve those equations. So what I'm doing here, for the benefit of everyone, is this. We have this cage that we're put into. We have this false cage that we're put into. That the only way of looking at the world is through the lenses of science. But if we were to do that, and I'm not knocking science here, science is a fantastic thing after all. All I'm saying is, this ridiculous belief that we believe in science would put you into a cage that you would have to deny metaphysics, you'd have to deny morals, you'd have to deny mathematics, you'd have to deny history, you'd have to even deny the very scientists that you're reading about. Islam doesn't teach this epistemology, this theory of knowledge. Islam teaches there's many ways of arriving at the truth. The Qur'an repeatedly tells us. It tells us to use our mind, to use our reason. And it tells us that using these tools will actually bring us closer to God, not further away from God. In the Qur'an, God says, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of night and day, there are signs for those with intelligence. Before I talk about this cigar, what I want to do is this. I want us to understand human beings are not just purely rational. Sometimes our emotions can cloud the way that we look at the world. And that is the fundamental issue between theism and atheism. Belief in God is rational, belief in God is natural. What stops people believing in God is their emotional psychology. When people understand, right, since I believe in God, there's going to be accountability. Since I believe in God, my life's going to be more difficult. Like I mentioned previously, that's not the case. In fact, it's the opposite. Believing in God will give you a happier life. Because as God says in the Qur'an, in the remembrance of God do hearts find peace. But if somebody doesn't want to believe in God, because they want to follow their desires, then the rational argumentation and all of those sort of things will make absolutely no impact on them. I used to, a few years ago, live in Oxford. And in Oxford, there used to be a corner shop. And in this corner shop, there was this guy who used to sell these small cigars. And he used to sell these small cigars. And I found out something very interesting, that one of his customers who came along and bought these very harmful cigars was actually a lung surgeon. So somebody who actually understands physically the impact of smoking on your lungs. And for anybody that's seen pictures of what cigarette smoking over a number of decades can do to your lungs, you will understand how ridiculous it would be for a lung surgeon to actually smoke cigars. But this is the case with the human being. If our emotional desire overrides our rational self, we will justify irrational behavior in a rational way. Look at the Nazis. If we were to go back in time to 1940 and speak to the Nazis and say, what you are doing is wrong, they wouldn't say, yeah, sorry, yeah, we're wrong, yeah, we're evil people. They're going to say, no, what we're doing is right. Human beings are impacted by their emotions, and their emotions can impact the way that they actually look at the world. This is extremely important, because if somebody believes, and let me be honest with you, it's difficult to believe in God if you want to live this life the way you want to live this life, because God conceptually can be a barrier, because you're going to be accountable. You can't just do what you like. But what we need to understand is that this life is limited and you're going to run out of time. And we should always look at every single thing in our life as a sign. Just yesterday, when I was sitting in this very room, when Ustad Abu Musab was actually speaking about atheists who they challenge God, although they themselves are physically challenged. They themselves are physically weak. They themselves are physically disabled. And I was reflecting about that particular thing that he said, that these people do not think that they want to challenge God, but they themselves can't fix themselves. And just this morning, and when the Ustad actually said that, I thought of Stephen Hawking, and I think that's who he was referring to. And just this morning, when I woke up and I checked my phone, I saw the message that Stephen Hawking had passed away. This was a sign for me, because I was thinking, this is the same thing we were talking about last night. That how can human beings challenge God when we're fundamentally so pathetic? We're fundamentally, if you really think about it, if you want to challenge God, we're so pathetic. Which human being can walk that the earth cracks and their height meets the height of the mountains? Which human being? We're so needy. Every couple of hours, we need water, we need food, we need coffee, we need this, we need that. And we want to challenge God. We need to understand our role in life, and we need to understand how short this life is, and that's going to help us to be in the right framework to understand the greatness of God and the reason why we actually exist. As I mentioned previously, you start off as a toddler, you grow older, you come into your teens, after your teens you go to university, then you become middle-aged, you become old, then you die. Sometimes earlier than that. And what we need to do is this. What we need to do is realize that this life is extremely short. This life, we shouldn't act like sheep. There was a study done by the University of Leeds in which they were looking at sheep, and what they discovered was that if 5% of sheep went into a certain direction, 95% of the sheep followed them. Just think about that. They don't know where they're going. They could be going off a cliff. The same group repeated the study with human beings, and they discovered that if 5% of human beings go in a direction, 95% follow them. Don't be a sheep. The amount of conversations I've had with people who repeat atheist garbage without even understanding it. Yeah, I don't believe in God because God's too complex. What does that even mean? I don't know. I just read it in a book. We're dealing with a situation, my brother, my sister, in humanity, we're dealing with a situation of whether the belief in God is real or not, and whether you will go to hellfire or paradise for eternity. This isn't a time to be a sheep. This is a time to actually think, to actually reflect. And anybody that truly reflects and truly thinks about these things will come to one conclusion. They will come to the conclusion that there is a creator, that creator is worthy of worship, and that worshipping that creator will give us contentment in this life, and it will be something which will safeguard us in the hereafter, and that nothing in this life, not finding the right partner, not going out clubbing every evening, nothing in this life will truly give you happiness. The only thing that will give you contentment is when you understand you were created for a higher purpose than that of a lower animal to survive and reproduce, and you were created to worship God. Sometimes when I give presentations or I speak about the existence of God, I get a very, I'm an atheist, so what? So I wanted to end on this verse, because if there is somebody in this room who has this sort of behavior, I don't have time for you, but what I do have time to do is to give you a Quranic verse. And this is a verse I often reflect about, and this is a verse which is sufficient as a reply to the arrogant. This is the truth from your Lord. Whoever wills, let him believe. Whoever wills, let him disbelieve. Everything good I have said is from God the Creator. Every mistake is my own. I thank you very much for listening.